Hey everybody, we're going to talk about calculating readability. So how do you know if the reading level of the text is reasonable for your students or for parents if you're sending information home to them? It is important that as a teacher of language arts or any other subject really, if you are having students read, you should know if the text that they're reading is accessible. And certainly there are content issues to be aware of. Do students have background knowledge and understanding of the content that they're reading? But the word choice and the length of sentences, the complexity of the text itself, its readability can be measured. And I'm going to show you how to do this manually, how we used to do it old school. There are plenty of apps and other resources available to find out the readability, the grade level or Lexile level of the text that you're using. So you may use other tools, but I'm going to make sure that you know how to calculate readability without technology. So you start by randomly selecting 300-word passages, and this is a little bit tedious. You do have to just simply count out a section of words. You can use this or do this with Word or some other word tool to calculate the number of words that are involved. But you have to come up with 300-word passages for the accuracy of this readability measure. Selecting the sections randomly is helpful. If you always select the beginning of a chapter, if you always select the middle, it does skew things. Usually the beginning of a chapter is a little bit lower readability than other sections of a book, but just make sure that you're selecting 3 random 100-word passages. You count then the number of sentences in each of those 100-word passages, and then you count the number of syllables in the 100-word passages. You plot that information on either the grade level or the age level graphs, which I'll show you in a minute, and determine which band the 3 samples fall into. So let's walk through that. Be aware that this is not a full sample. This is just an example, and I wanted it to be large enough on the slide for you to be able to read it. So I've counted out a passage, assumably 100 words. This one is actually only 50. But my first step is to determine, okay, how many sentences are there? And so if we look, we see a period after doctor, we see another after children, after girl, after child, after unsettling, after before, and then we get to part of a sentence. We don't even have a full sentence there. So you would count up those sentences. And we'll say it's about 7.25. Then, after you've counted sentences, you're going to count syllables. Now, counting out the syllables is a significant issue because we know that we've counted already 100 words. And so we're automatically going to have at least 100 syllables. You can't have a word that is less than 1 syllable. And anytime you're tallying and marking over 100 of something, the likelihood of making an error is high. So I have a little trick for you. We're only going to mark the words that have more than 1 syllable. So Chris Moore is a doctor. Doctor is 2 syllables. Chris Moore is and are all single syllables. So doctor gets a tally because it has 2 syllables. He performs, again a 2-syllable word gets 1 tally. And then operations, 4-syllable word, we assume 1 syllable, it gets 3 tallies over the top. So you keep going through that until all of the words have been tallied. The one thing to note, numbers usually are not included. So if you have a date like 1999, you would not include the syllable count of that. You would just skip it. If you're reading a passage that has significant numbers, you may want to choose a different passage. So in this, assuming if I counted up all of those tallies, we already know there's 100. So we do 100 plus my 30 tallies equals 130 syllables in this section. Now we use the Fry graph. And one of the graphs is for grade level, the other is for age level. You'll just have to determine which you prefer for that. Most teachers like to use grade level, but you're certainly able to use the age graph if that's what you prefer. So let's say that we had the following data from our samples. We had 4.5 sentences with 116 syllables, 5 sentences with 122 syllables, or 4.8 sentences with 123 syllables. We would plot those out like this. And we're lucky enough that they're all lining up pretty nicely. So all right there along the line between 6th and 7th grade, right? So the 6th to 7th grade text has, as you can see, longer sentences. It's closer here to this side of the line. This line is a barrier here between longer words or longer sentences. The passage we're having students read has longer sentences, and they're all right about late 6th grade, beginning of 7th grade. So we could say this passage was late 6th grade, early 7th grade. So are there easier ways? Absolutely. Microsoft Word used to have some directions. I'm not even certain that these are still accurate, but in their tools section and options, they had some spelling and grammar tools that would allow you to show the readability statistics. There are, I know, certainly apps and free websites where you can just import your text. You can cut and paste it in and it will tell you the readability level. All of these have slightly different scales that they're dealing with, but still it does give you a sense of what is the reading level of this material, and do I think my students could take that in? Would it be accessible to them? That's what I have for you on readability. If you have questions, would you please let me know? Have a great day.